In a world of corporate drama and family betrayal, one woman's hidden success becomes her greatest weapon. This is the story of power reclaimed and justice rewritten. My name is Gemma Maxwell. If you told me a few years ago that I'd one day build an empire from ashes, I would have laughed. Back then, I believed family meant protection. Back then, I still believed in loyalty. I grew up in a world of glass towers and silver lies, the Maxwell dynasty. We owned everything that gleamed in the city skyline: hotels, chains, and investments stretching across oceans. People called us the royal family of corporate success. But behind every glossy magazine cover, there was rot. My father, Richard Maxwell, built our empire from nothing. He was brilliant, cold, and feared. He taught me that weakness was a disease, and love was a distraction. My mother, on the other hand, was warmth personified. Until she wasn't. She learned long ago that survival meant silence. And my brother, Leo, he was the golden child. The heir. The perfect son with a charming smile and an appetite for destruction. I was the daughter who stayed in the shadows, the quiet observer, the one with too many questions. I thought knowledge was my weapon. But I didn't know then, the people closest to you can use your own truth as a blade. It started with a deal. A merger worth billions, the kind that makes or breaks families. I'd spent 2 years building it in secret, a tech venture that could have transformed our company into something ethical, transparent, sustainable. It was my hidden success. My shot at modernizing the empire without blood on its hands. But the night before the deal was signed, my world imploded. I walked into the boardroom to find my project, my life's work, presented under Leo's name. My documents. My code. My signature, forged. And there they sat, my father, my brother, the board. Applauding his vision. They called him a genius. They called him the future of Maxwell Holdings. And I was invisible. I confronted my father after the meeting. He didn't even flinch. He said, "You gave Leo the idea. That's what family does. We share. But sharing doesn't mean stealing. And family doesn't mean betrayal." That was the night I left. No screaming, no tears, just quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before a storm. I moved into a cramped apartment downtown, traded designer heels for sneakers, traded limousines for subways. Everyone thought I'd given up. They whispered that I couldn't handle the pressure. But what they didn't know was, I was studying them. Every pattern, every weakness, every secret buried under polished press releases. And that's when I met Ava. A data analyst who'd once worked for my brother before he destroyed her career. She had the kind of intelligence that made enemies. We started meeting in coffee shops, sharing information piece by piece, building something in the shadows. The goal wasn't revenge, not yet. It was justice. But justice has a strange way of transforming into something sharper. 6 months later, I learned the truth. Leo hadn't just stolen my project. He'd sabotaged it, sold company data to a rival firm, pocketed millions, and pinned the blame on an anonymous consultant. That consultant was Ava. And the rival firm? Owned by my mother's secret trust. That's when everything snapped into focus. The betrayal wasn't just Leo's. It was my whole family's game. And I had been a pawn since birth. But they'd made one mistake. They underestimated what happens when the pawn decides to become the queen. Ava and I rebuilt my project, off the grid this time. New code. New funding. A new name. We called it Veritech, truth in every transaction. And while the Maxwells were busy expanding their empire through deception, we were building ours on clarity. But I knew it wasn't enough to rise. I needed them to fall. So I infiltrated their world again, not through the front door, but through the shadows. An anonymous investor. A whisper behind closed deals. A silent partner funding their competitors. I started feeding journalists quiet truths, leaked documents, insider emails, hidden ledgers. Each headline was a tiny fracture in their fortress. Each revelation, a step closer to justice. Then one night, Leo called me. His voice was trembling, though he tried to hide it. "Gemma," he said. "We need to talk." I could hear panic behind his arrogance. The empire was cracking. I met him in our father's old office. The city lights burned behind the glass, the same skyline that used to feel like home. He looked older, desperate. "Who's doing this?" he demanded. I smiled. "Truth," I said. "The truth's doing this." He slammed his fist on the desk. "You think this makes you powerful? You're destroying our family." "Our family destroyed itself," I whispered. He didn't know that every word of our conversation was being recorded. That by morning, it would air on every major financial news outlet. But as I left that room, something inside me shifted. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It was rebirth. And yet, deep down, I knew the real enemy wasn't Leo. It wasn't even my father. It was the legacy that bred them. The hunger. The silence. The inheritance of deceit. The Maxwell name had ruled through fear. Now, it would fall through truth. But empires don't crumble quietly. And in the dark corners of that collapsing empire, someone was already planning their counterstrike. The next morning, I woke up to a message from Ava. "Gemma," it read, "they know. The war had just begun." When Ava's message flashed across my screen, "they know," I felt the air leave my lungs. For months, I'd been pulling the strings. Now, someone had found the thread that led back to me. It started subtly. My apartment door slightly ajar when I returned from work. Emails disappearing. A black car parked across the street for 3 nights straight. I knew the Maxwell family's reach. They didn't just control money, they controlled people. And when control slips, desperation turns lethal. Ava insisted we go dark. No phones. No cloud backups. Just encrypted drives, face-to-face meetings, and burner devices. We relocated operations to an old warehouse near the waterfront, peeling paint, leaking roof, and just enough noise from the trains to drown out our secrets. From there, we watched the empire unravel. Leo was under investigation for insider trading. The board was panicking. My father had gone silent, too silent. Then the first blow landed. An exposé dropped online, accusing me of orchestrating corporate sabotage, embezzlement, and manipulation of the press. They had forged documents, deepfake videos, anonymous sources. Everything I'd done to them mirrored right back at me. In the world of power, truth doesn't matter, perception does. Overnight, I went from whistleblower to villain. Headlines called me the heiress of chaos. My apartment was raided. My accounts frozen. Even Ava's name appeared on a leaked list of co-conspirators. We'd become the hunted. That night, Ava and I sat on the warehouse floor surrounded by shattered plans and glowing monitors. She looked at me, eyes red, voice shaking, and said, "They'll ruin everything we've built." I shook my head. "No," I said softly. "They'll try." Something had awakened in me, a kind of fire that burns past fear. I'd spent years obeying rules written by men who believed emotion was weakness. But emotion, raw, unfiltered conviction, is power. I decided it was time to turn the tables. Ava and I went hunting for the one thing the Maxwells feared most, their real books. The offshore accounts, shell companies, secret transactions that could collapse everything they owned. And buried in those digital vaults, I found it, a hidden transfer to an organization called the Meridian Trust. The signature was my mother's. It wasn't just Leo. It wasn't just my father. My mother, the quiet, graceful woman who taught me kindness, had been laundering money for years. All in my name. That was how they planned to destroy me. Make me the scapegoat for the family's crimes. Erasing their guilt with mine. I remember standing at the pier that night, the wind cold and heavy with salt. For the first time, I questioned everything, even justice itself. How do you fight corruption when it wears the face of the people who raised you? How do you cleanse blood with blood? Ava put her hand on my shoulder. "Gemma," she said quietly, "you don't have to become them to beat them." But in that moment, I wasn't sure she was right. Because sometimes to destroy monsters, you have to step into the dark and speak their language. So I did. I reached out to an old contact of my father's, Victor Kale, a corporate strategist with ties to nearly every major conglomerate in the city. He was sharp, ruthless, and didn't pretend to be moral. When we met, he smiled like a wolf. "Gemma Maxwell," he said, leaning back in his chair. "The prodigal daughter turned arsonist. What do you want from me?" "Not help," I said. "A partnership." We struck a deal. He'd connect me with investors willing to bet against the Maxwells, shorting their stocks, funding our rivals, and amplifying every whisper of scandal. In return, I'd give him access to Veritech's encryption model, the same system that exposed corruption. It was dangerous, reckless, and brilliant. Within weeks, the markets turned. Maxwell Holdings began to bleed value. Reporters circled like vultures. Leo vanished from public view. And then, almost poetically, my father reappeared in a televised address. He stood behind his desk, that same unshakable composure he'd always had, and said, "The recent attacks against our company and family have been orchestrated by one of our own. My daughter, Gemma Maxwell." He didn't blink. He didn't hesitate. He condemned me to the world, and the world believed him. For a moment, I thought it was over. But something inside me, something fierce and ancient, refused to break. I turned off the TV, looked at Ava, and said, "Then we end this." We hacked into their live server feed, overriding the Maxwell broadcast. And for the first time, the world saw the truth. Every forged document. Every illegal transfer. Every hidden ledger signed by my father and Leo. It was chaos. The media exploded. Regulators launched investigations. But with every revelation, the danger grew. Ava disappeared 2 nights later. Her apartment was stripped clean, not a trace left. Her phone, her drives, her notes, gone. I tore through the city looking for her, calling every contact I had. And then I got a message from an unknown number. "You wanted the truth, Gemma. Come find it." It was an address, the Maxwell Mansion. I should have walked away. But some wars demand to be finished. When I entered that house, it felt haunted. The same marble floors, the same scent of oak and money, but hollow now. In the study, my father sat by the fire, holding a glass of brandy. Across from him, Ava. Alive, but pale, shaken, silent. "Gemma," he said smoothly, "you've caused quite the storm." I stared at him, then at Ava. "What did you do to her?" He smiled faintly. "Nothing she didn't agree to. You see, everyone has a price." Ava wouldn't look at me. And that hurt more than anything. "Did you sell me out?" I whispered. Her eyes glistened. I had no choice. My father stood, circling us both like a predator. "You've embarrassed this family, dragged our name through the mud, destroyed everything I built. But I'm offering you a way out. Sign over Veritech. Disappear. And this ends." I looked at Ava. Her tears said she wanted me to walk away, that she'd already surrendered. But surrender was never my language. "I built Veritech," I said. "And you built an empire of lies. Let's see which one survives." I turned, walked toward the door, and felt the weight of every choice pressing against me. Then his voice, sharp as glass, stopped me. "You're just like your mother." I froze. "What?" He laughed softly. "She started this war long before you were born. You think she was innocent? She built the shell companies. She taught me how to hide money. You were never supposed to find out. She was my greatest ally, until she betrayed me too." My heart felt like it cracked open. Everything, every memory of her, twisted into something poisoned. I left that night without looking back. But I knew one thing, my war wasn't over. Now, it wasn't just for justice. It was for truth. For every woman told she's too emotional, too fragile, too small to fight giants. And as I stepped into the cold city night, the skyline burning with artificial light, I whispered to myself, they built this world on lies. I'll rebuild it on fire. The city was never quiet after midnight. Even when the world slept, ambition whispered through the streets, neon signs flickering like restless hearts. That night, I walked beneath those lights with a single thought pulsing in my mind. It was time to end the Maxwells. For months, I'd fought in the shadows. But now the truth had faces, names, and scars. My father's empire was crumbling. Leo was in hiding. And my mother, the woman I once saw as Grace incarnate, was nowhere to be found. I didn't know then that she would become the final key to everything. After the confrontation at the mansion, Ava was gone again. No messages. No trace. Part of me wanted to hate her, but another part, the part that had once built dreams beside her, knew she was a casualty of power. And casualties are fuel for transformation. So I did what I do best. I built. Vera Tech went public, not as a tech company, but as a movement. A platform for transparency, designed to expose corruption across industries. We didn't just reveal lies. We rewrote the rules of accountability. And the world listened. My name, once smeared across headlines as scandal, was now whispered as legend. The fallen heiress who rose from betrayal to burn the system that created her. But even in victory, something in me ached. Because justice without closure feels like winning a war in ruins. And my ruins still had ghosts. One morning, a brown envelope arrived at my office. No sender. No message. Inside was a photo, me as a child, sitting on my mother's lap in the Maxwell garden. On the back, in delicate handwriting, the truth is never what it seems. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I flipped open my laptop and traced the metadata from the scanned image. It led to a private clinic on the outskirts of the city, a rehabilitation center for the wealthy, the disgraced, the forgotten. And she was there. I found her in a sunlit courtyard, her hair streaked with silver, her gaze heavy but unbroken. "Gemma," she said softly. "You shouldn't have come." "Then why send me the photo?" "Because," she said, her voice trembling, "you're still fighting the wrong war." I didn't understand. Not until she told me everything. She hadn't betrayed me. She'd betrayed my father, years ago. When she discovered the family's empire was built on exploitation, she tried to dismantle it from within. But he found out. He threatened her, destroyed her reputation, and forced her into silence. The offshore accounts under her name? A trap, built to make her the scapegoat. And when she refused to cooperate, he broke her. I listened as tears burned behind my eyes. All these years, I carried anger where I should have carried grief. And now, I saw her not as the quiet mother who'd watched my father rule, but as the first woman who ever defied him. The first casualty in a war I was born to finish. She took my hands. "You've already done what I couldn't," she said. "But if you want true justice, you have to show them what power looks like when it doesn't destroy, when it builds." Those words branded themselves into me. It wasn't enough to expose corruption. I had to redefine strength itself. When I left the clinic, I called Victor Kale. "We're not burning the empire anymore," I told him. "We're rebuilding it." He laughed. "Rebuilding takes longer. Then we'll build forever." And so it began, the rebirth of everything they tried to bury. We bought out Maxwell Holdings piece by piece, through shell companies, silent investors, and open takeovers. Every acquisition stripped away the old corruption and replaced it with transparency. Every worker they exploited became a shareholder. Every partner they deceived became an ally. By the time Leo resurfaced, furious, desperate, broken, it was already too late. He stormed into my office, eyes blazing. "You think you've won?" He spat. "You stole everything." I smiled. "No, brother. I reclaimed it." He slammed his fist on the desk. "You ruined our name." "No," I said quietly. "I gave it meaning." Security escorted him out, but before he left, he turned and said something I'll never forget. "You're just like him?" For a long time, that haunted me. Because power corrupts, even righteous power whispers in the dark. And I knew I was standing on a knife's edge between justice and vengeance. But then I looked around at what Vera Tech had become. Thousands of employees, women in leadership, people who believed in truth, not dominance. I wasn't my father. I was the evolution of everything he failed to understand. Months later, the final chapter unfolded. The Maxwell name was absorbed into Vera Tech. The last of their accounts seized. Their empire, transformed. And on the day we unveiled the company's new headquarters, I walked onto the stage beneath a sky of glass and light. Reporters filled the room. The same media that once called me a scandal now waited on my every word. I took a breath. And for the first time, I didn't feel like I was speaking to them, I was speaking for them. I was born into a dynasty built on silence, I said. I was taught that emotion was weakness. But emotion is how we rebuild the world. Every act of betrayal taught me truth. Every scar became a signature. And today, this isn't the end of the Maxwell empire. It's the beginning of something greater. I paused. Somewhere in the crowd, I thought I saw my mother, standing tall, proud, free. Or maybe it was just a memory. I smiled. This, I said, is what power looks like when it chooses justice. The applause thundered through the hall, echoing off the walls like a promise. Later that night, I stood alone on the rooftop, the city glowing beneath me, my city now. And I realized something I never expected. Revenge is a fire that consumes. But justice is the light that remains after the flames. The wind brushed my hair as I whispered into the night, for every woman who's ever been silenced, this is your proof. You can lose everything and still rise higher than they ever imagined. And as the first hint of dawn touched the skyline, I finally understood my mother's words. The truth isn't what it seems. It's stronger. It's alive. It's reborn, every time we choose to stand again. And I was still standing. Every story of justice leaves a spark behind. If you felt Gemma's strength, stay for more emotional success stories and hidden power journeys. Hit like and subscribe for more stories like this one. Until next time, rise quietly. Rise fiercely.